One important policy that you introduced some years ago was the idea of generational safety nets, beginning with the Pioneer Generation Package, and then we had the Merdeka, and then the modular packages for the young seniors amongst us, some of us, who may not have built up enough savings. Why has uplifting entire generations of Singaporeans been so important to you?
They brought us here. If they hadn't stood and fought at the critical moment, and then slogged and built their whole lives to take Singapore forward, and saved and enabled the next generation to move higher and further than they did, we wouldn't be here today. I mean, every generation does this for the next generation. Hopefully wants to do this. But I think for the Pioneer generation and the Merdeka generation, it was exceptional. Exceptional in the challenges they faced and the courage which they showed. And I think in the privations they experienced, because they came from poverty and nothing to a level which you would say, well, were much more prosperous than before, but long journey to go yet. And over their lifetimes, what they earned, what they saved, is much less than what the younger generations are earning and saving. When you ask me about younger generations feeling hard done by, I said, I think that's not true. We have worked very hard to enable the younger generations to do better than us. And therefore, I think we owe it to them, now that we are not poor, now that we have accumulated some surpluses and some buffer, to be able to say, thank you very much, we honor you, here's a gesture, which we hope will be helpful to you in your golden years. The Pioneer generation, especially so, the Merdeka generation, different package. The Madula package is slightly different because by the time we reach the young seniors, I think they would have been able to provide quite a lot for their own old age and retirement because our CPF rates were higher and they would have had good CPF contributions during the years of working. But we know that amongst that generation, there will be some who don't have enough and also quite a few who are sandwiched in the sense that their parents are now old and need care and support, and their kids are still dependent on them, maybe still in school or university or poly, and so with fairly heavy burdens. And so we felt that the Madula package would be appropriate and I think will be appreciated. It's an indication that we understand that they're carrying a heavy burden, and this is, we hope, something which will be helpful to you. And fortunately, we could afford it, and so we have done it.
PM, the ethos of self-reliance has long been an important political philosophy for Singapore. But you said in a speech in 2004 that, and I'm going to quote you, more money is not always the solution and can sometimes create other problems as well. What is there to stop us from sort of moving towards a welfare state as we pursue what we want, which is an inclusive society?
Well, we have some restraints and we don't have some restraints. The restraint is if you don't have the money, you can't do it. You may want it, you may think it's good, but if you don't have the money, you can't do it. If you become a welfare state like the Europeans, you're talking about spending maybe 45% of the GDP by the government on your behalf, and the government taxes and raises maybe 40% of GDP from people. So from the first dollar you earn, you pay 20, 30 cents, and then therefore you can afford the healthcare, the pensions, the unemployment benefits, and so on. In Singapore, we don't collect 40% of taxes in GDP, we don't spend 45% of GDP on social and other government programs. We collect 15% of GDP in tax, and we spend maybe 18, 19% of GDP in total government spending. So it's a totally different scale. People say, oh, GST is so high, but actually the taxes in Singapore are very low compared to other countries. Our GST went up recently. In the developed countries were welfare states. You're talking about 20, 25% of GDP. plus many other taxes, income, on wealth sometimes, on petrol, diesel, all sorts of things. Because otherwise, how can you afford it? So for us, the constraint is, if you can't afford it, and if you are not prepared to pay for it, then we can't have it. If you are prepared to pay for it, and you think that benefits need to be enhanced, the payouts are not enough, or the coverage needs to be improved, these are things which you do have to adjust from time to time. We have to do them, but we have to afford them. And that means if we have to raise revenues in order to pay for them and raise taxes once in a while, we have to do that. Which was the reason why the GST had to go up. GST Singapore is 9. It had to go from 7 to 9. And the reason is because of healthcare. Healthcare expenditure is going up steadily, sharply, predictably, and unavoidably. And I have to afford that, and I have to pay for that. The opposition will tell you, just take a bit more from the reserves, you won't go broke. You won't feel bad about raiding the bank. But you look at the scale of it, if you want to go for a welfare state and you raid the reserves from 18% of GDP spending now to what a welfare state spends, double that or more than that, I think the reserves, however ample, will be gone very soon, and that won't do. So basically, we have to be able to afford it to spend it. Secondly, the other thing we don't have by way of restraint is we don't have a political constituency which says, I don't want so much welfare. I don't want so much taxes. I want lower taxes, less welfare. Like the Republican Party in America, like the Conservatives in Britain. We have no such constituency in Singapore. There's no such party in Singapore. That's not the PAP's policy. It is no opposition party's policy. Why? Because in Singapore, if you want to form the government, you have no hope of forming a government saying less taxes, less welfare. Because we've made the country equal, we've made the constituencies all mixed, and the majority of Singaporeans are Singaporeans who are both paying taxes and enjoying the benefits. And really, they are in the income groups which will say, give me a bit more benefits, but don't tax me some more. So the pressure is to push the benefits up, to push towards more generous social safety nets, and at risk of going to too much excess, and then we dull the incentive to work, and then we have a problem also with paying for it. So I hope, what does that mean? That means in the absence of a political restraint from a conservative type party, the government has to be the one to be the gatekeeper and the balancer, and has to judge what is this we must spend, what is it which we need to do, which social safety nets are necessary, how far should we go before we draw the line. What can we afford, and what would be wise from the point of view of balancing between incentives to achieve and safety in case you fall upon hard times. And that's the government's job. And over the last 20 years, we've actually moved very far towards better social safety nets. We created ComCare to bring all our schemes together, to enhance the schemes and focus them better. We did Workfare for lower income workers. We did the progressive wage, again for lower income workers, so that it's not just topping up to a certain level, but you have job progression and wage progression. We've enhanced protections for MediShield Life, for medical insurance, so that you can afford your hospital bills, for CPF Life, for old age, so that you have money for retirement, for CareShield Life, in case as you grow older and gradually become less able to look after yourself, you are long-term needing care, and well, you're not in hospital, but you need some support, you have CareShield Life. So these are all things which we have done all within the last 20 years. It is very considerable. Of course, people will always say, please do more. And we will keep on improving.
PM, as you said, nobody will say less taxes, less welfare, but there are some people who are saying maybe less taxes or keep the taxes, but more welfare.
That's right.
So how would you resist the pressure maybe to, have more and more packages? Because maybe people will have that kind of expectations. And also, will we be able to afford it if...
Well, it depends. And I think the attitude should be, we work hard, we are prudent. If things turn out well and we have a good year, everybody can enjoy the upside. And we try to make the upside not just a distribution of a dividend, which is you spend the money, is gone, but something meaningful which addresses not just somebody's real need, but something which as a society we feel this is a group which deserves our recognition and support. And from time to time, I hope we'll be able to do well enough to be in that situation and to have the Prime Minister deliver good news at the National Day rally and the Finance Minister have a happy budget. But you have to work at it, and if you say, I want happy NDRs and budgets every year for the next 10 years, well, that's not the way the world works.
For the last 20 years as Prime Minister, Mr. Lee, you have kept your ear to the ground trying to foster this inclusivity, trying to convey to every Singaporean possible that they're heard. Maybe not addressing every single issue immediately, but that they are heard. At the same time, you've striven to keep Singaporeans united, and you've had to deal with a number of issues in that regard, with the S377A issue, with the wearing of tudung issue as well. Do you think after 20 years that Singaporeans have been able to foster, to grow a stronger Singaporean identity?
I have no doubt the identity is stronger. It's 20 more years of nation building, it's 20 more years of ups and downs and trials and tribulations and joys and sorrows. Before me was SARS, we had COVID. Before me we had the Asian financial crisis, then we had the GFC, then we've had other economic problems from time to time. In 2015, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong died. It was an enormous outpouring of emotions and I think of a shared experience and bonding. And there have been other issues we have been dealing with too during these 20 years, like 377A, like the tudung issue, which in the way we dealt with it, enable us to understand each other better and to accept each other's differences and respect each other and work out practical arrangements for that. Another very important issue which we dealt with, which was also sensitive and could easily have caused a very big problem, was the JI group after 9/11, because terrible terrorist attacks had taken place. New York was far away, but they took place in our region, in Bali, in Jakarta, subsequently. And how do we react? We are multiracial, we have Muslims, we have non-Muslims. Do we trust each other or not? Will we have an incident here or not? How do we prevent people from being led astray and become radicalized and then become a danger to Singaporeans? So we worked very hard at that. Mr. Goh Chok Tong started it because 9/11 was on his watch. And then I carried on afterwards, worked with the Malay Muslim community, worked with the Asatizas, particularly RRG, Ustaz Ali and Ustaz Hasbi chairing them. Worked with the community groups, talked to them, had sessions with them, had mixed sessions with everybody together to talk openly about what we fear will happen and why and how we must not fear one another. And after all that we came through, we were fortunate. We have not had any terrorist attack in Singapore so far. I mean, several were aborted by our security agencies, but it could have happened easily. It didn't, but I think going through that experience has helped to bring us closer together. But to say, after this, we can fly solo. The government can take hands off the steering wheel or the controls and it will look after itself. I don't think so. Never. It's not possible. Because these issues are forever sensitive ones, and you need to have limits to the discussion. You need to have the tone set by the government. And if we are going to make a major move, for example, on tudung for nurses or decriminalizing male homosexuality, if the government doesn't make it, it's not going to happen, or it is going to happen in a very chaotic and very contentious way. It's like in America, the federal government is unable to legislate on abortion legislation. What came about was Roe versus Wade, which was really a political judgment by a Supreme Court, a judicial body. And it's a political issue rather than a judicial issue. And it's being fought out again 40 years, 50 years after Roe versus Wade in the political arena, in all of the states and again in the federal government and in the presidential elections. So I think that it's better for the government to guide it, allow more discussions, allow freer exchange of views, and you can allow more liberal practices too. But I think we have to handle this with very great care. Always.
Yeah, we've been able to communicate with the Malay Muslim community on a lot of sensitive issues, getting the support, the trust. What's your sense about the trust with the 4G leaders, DPM Wong, and what would be your advice to them in terms of approaching sensitive issues with the community?
I think both sides are working at it. I see DPM Wong has been attending many iftars, buka puasas over the Ramadan recently. And it's not just that, because he's been meeting the community leaders, the religious leaders, the MPs, and PEP ground Malay activists. All this will be part of the work of developing that relationship and mutual confidence and trust, understanding each other, where you stand, what you can say yes to, what you can ask for, what you can ask for, but the government will probably be unable to agree to. And it will take time to build up, but I'm sure they'll be able to do it.
And following up on all the issues you spoke earlier about Tudong, about 377A, about terrorism, Jemaah Islamiyah, which is the most difficult and sensitive topic you have to approach?
I think Jemaah Islamiyah, the terrorism threat was a long-standing one. So if you ask about difficulty to handle, that was one where for more than a decade, and even for 2 decades, you had to keep on watching it and worry whether something suddenly go bang and then you're in serious trouble. Or you have a crisis to handle to prevent serious trouble. So that's a continuing challenge over 20 years. The other issues like Tudong, we handled over a long period of time, or 377A. Long period of time, we had talked about it since way before I became PM. But we could discuss it, and it was something where we had confidence that the community had a moderate view, accepted the government's perspective, and was prepared to work with the government and give us time to manage the issue without polarizing and hardening opinions. And I think that was a tremendous help and enabled us finally, when the time was ripe, to deal with them and to have a good resolution. But I think the most difficult one, which is going to be a long-term challenge again, is what Dawn talked about earlier, and that is managing the inherent tensions between wanting social cohesion among Singaporeans and being open and bringing in immigrants and foreign workforce, and managing that and making people feel comfortable and not feel threatened or having social tensions build up. And that is something which is going to be very difficult to manage, because we don't have a lot of maneuvering room on the downside. You can't say, I send off all the foreign workers and then tomorrow we'll be okay. Every now and again we have a debate in Parliament and the opposition goes strum at drang and says, why so many? And we say, well, do you want to cut it all off and let all the SMEs have no foreign worker quota? And say, no, we don't mean that. We feel for SMEs too. Well, if you do, and you feel for not just the SME employer, but the SME Singaporean worker, and the Singaporeans working for MNCs, and the Singaporeans whose jobs are in companies where without the foreign worker, the company wouldn't be here. And if you want Singapore to grow, then we have no choice but to work very hard to find ways we can have our cake and eat most of it. And that's a continuing long-term challenge.
Yeah, we can talk a bit more about the Malay Muslim community.
Yes.
As Prime Minister for 20 years,
Yes.
where do you think community has done well and perhaps where we could have done better?
Well, where you have done well is the things which we talked about. Our national cohesion, our social cohesion, our unity is stronger today in large part because the Malay community has played its part and has helped us to manage issues and bring everyone closer together and not become further apart. If you look at the progress in the traditional indicators, portion going to post-secondary education, you are now 80% of the Malay students go on to post-secondary education. If you look at university participation for young adults, that means 20 to 30-ish. You're talking about 20% of that cohort having graduated from university. It's improved a lot over the last 20 years. And I think it will continue to improve because with each generation, you've gone to school, you've completed poly, you know how to make this journey, and you are better able to take care of your kids and encourage your kids to do the same as you and go further than you. So I fully expect this to improve. And you can see it in the workforce. Proportions of PMETs has gone up who are Malay. And it's quite common, you see a Malay engineer, a Malay lawyer, a Malay doctor. Everybody thinks it's quite normal and treats them completely equally because they're equal and up to par and same standard as everybody else. That's how our system works. So I think that these are wins which happen quietly year by year, bit by bit, and you may not notice it, but I think we should be proud of it. You still have issues with incarceration rates, you still have issues with drug rates, drug abuse numbers, you still have issues with dysfunctional families. We are working on them with Comlink Plus, with Mendaki has all kinds of programs. And I think the willingness of the professional, successful Malays to come back and contribute has been sustained. In Mendaki, certainly, but you look at the other groups like AMP, they have been able to keep going and build up their programs. AMP is now existing, I don't know, about 30 years. Not quite, but more than about 25 years at least. So these are achievements and these are reasons to hope that we will continue to make progress.
Yeah, there's also issues beyond our shore as well. For example, the Israel-Gaza issue. Views from outside has an impact on the community. So what are your views on this?
It's a reality of our society. It's what I talked about right at the beginning, that compared to before, when the outside could be far away, today the outside is on your doorstep. In the previous generation, if there's war in the Middle East, it's war in the Middle East. We really don't know much about it. You may read in the Berita Harian some reports, but really you don't get the feel, you don't get the smell of the fear and the anger and the passion which is there. But today you see it. You see it on TikTok, you see it on your WhatsApp groups, you see it, people discussing it with one another. You see it also when you get a clip come your way and you don't know whether this came from Gaza or from Chechnya, or maybe it came from somewhere else altogether, nothing to do with it. But you send it to your friends and then everybody gets worked up. So it's a reality, it's the way the world is, it's the way our own society is. I completely understand how Muslims in Singapore have become very aroused by what's happening in Gaza, very distressed. It's unconscionable, it's inhuman. What can you do about that? And you feel for it because, first, you're a fellow human being like everybody else, but also there's a religious element to this feeling because the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is not about religion, but that religion is an element. I mean, you talk about Al-Aqsa Mosque, Jerusalem, and here there is a religious identification. So the Muslims feel much more strongly about this, generally speaking, than the non-Muslims in Singapore. I think others too, young Singaporeans, they are worked up, but I would say if you're a Muslim, that's an extra factor which makes sure you're very, very engaged. And I think we have to recognize that, respect that, understand it, and try to get people to work together so see what can we do to acknowledge these feelings, but to do which is practical and not just performative. You know, I can strike pose, say this, do that, have a demonstration, burn flags. It's cathartic, but does it help people who desperately need help? What will help? You raise donations. I think that makes a difference. We've raised donations generously. The community has contributed. We arrange the donations. I mean, Singapore Red Cross went to Egypt to help to deliver. I think they went to El Arish in Sinai, where the base is. We went further. We decided that we would make a donation. The government would donate. We would make another collection because the donations had been enough. We collected and purchased more appropriate food, medical necessities and so on. And we delivered it to the Middle East and actually airdropped it on an RSAF C-130, flying from Jordan over Gaza, and we dropped the food and the parcels to the population there, and hopefully help them with their urgent needs, but also show that they got friends. So I think these are practical things you can do. To take a stand, to state what we approve of, disapprove of, we have to do that. So we have taken a stand first at the UN, where we voted for the ceasefire resolutions at the General Assembly repeatedly. Secondly, parliamentary statements and government statements, and make clear what we stand for, what we approve of, what we condemn. And we stand for peace in the Middle East. We stand for humane treatment. We condemn terrorist attacks, including October the 7th, which was unconscionable and abhorrent. We also do not approve of what has happened, and we reject the actions which are taking place in Gaza, the hardship and the misery and the destruction and the innocent deaths of so many people, women and children and old people, from Israeli retaliation in Gaza. That the Israelis have to hit back, that they have to protect themselves and to hit at Hamas, I think they are entitled to do that. But the degree of damage and destruction and civilian casualties and collateral damage, I think that's, whatever the legalities from a humanitarian point of view, that must stop. And we've made that view quite clear, and I think that's the right thing for us to do. And I hope that Singaporeans, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, will understand that, and will also understand the need for us to stay together and to look at it as Singapore, as a national position which the government has to take, even though we will each have different personal attitudes. Which was the reason why MOE, Ministry of Education, embarked on the CCE class in schools. Not to educate people on the Middle East, that's too ambitious a project. It'll take you a master's course to understand that. But at least to understand that something very dramatic and drastic and tragic is happening there, and that we have different feelings about it amongst us, and how do we understand that, process that. I think that was essential.
So now that you have touched on the Malay Muslim community, I would like to ask you, how do you think the Indian community has evolved over the past few years, and what are some challenges and gaps that have to be addressed?
Well, the Indian community, I think, has been doing well too, in the sense that you have, not that you don't have issues, because, I mean, like every other community, you have a certain group who are having family issues and kids growing up not quite right who need to be helped. But you have got Sinda, and Sinda has, I think, done a very good job. It's smaller than Mendaki, but you've got some very active volunteers, passionate volunteers, some Singaporeans, some immigrants, some not even citizens, but just families working here, some kids, teens, who are working with families who need help, who go and do reading with them, who mentor them, and who guide them, and I think it makes a big difference. You will have to keep on doing this, because these are problems which will not easily disappear, but you are doing the right thing. You do have one issue which I talked about a couple of National Day rallies ago, which is that between Indians who are Singaporeans and newly arrived Indians, sometimes naturalized, sometimes not, you're not the same, and therefore you have to find ways to bridge that gap with each other. And that is something which is continuing work. We have tried hard to do it, to talk to the new arrivals. This is Singapore, it's not the same as a city in India. We welcome you, but please know how things operate down here in Singapore, in our temples, in our multiracial interactions. And at the same time talking to Singaporeans so that they can understand why there is an inflow and how to think about it. But that is an issue which, I mean, other Singaporeans also notice an influx. because their numbers are not small, but they are talented people and they are very valuable to us, and I think we should welcome them and as we manage the flow. It so happens that, people talk about top institutions in India, IIT, IIM, the Indian Institute of Technology and the Indian Institute of Management. If you can get into one of them, it's like getting into MIT or Stanford or Harvard. And we have the biggest concentration of IIT and IIM graduates in the world outside of India. They are in Singapore. And they have an association or two, or maybe two associations, and from time to time they have functions. I think that's good, because it adds something to us. We generate our own talent, but if I can get such a pool, come here, work here, it's a tremendous plus for us.
We can sometimes be an attractive target for people who want to try to influence the population, and this also affects our unity. So Singapore has passed the Foreign Interference and Countermeasures Act, and in fact we designated the first person as a politically significant person already. So I'm wondering, maybe you can elaborate more about your views on these measures, and also what does it really mean to be a politically significant person?
That we are open is more so now, but to some extent has always been so for quite a long time because we are so small, that there are people outside who want to influence us, sometimes for the better, sometimes for their own purposes, is also not a new thing. We have known black operations for a long time in Singapore. In the 1960s, 1970s, some were in the newspapers, meaning not reported in the newspapers, but operating in the newspapers. And Eastern Sun, Singapore Herald, Chinese newspapers had their own cases too. So black ops are by foreign players, and some of them use political individuals, people in opposition politicians in Singapore, to spout their messages and to try and influence Singaporeans in those days. So that there are outside powers or actors wanting to influence us is nothing new. But what is new is that they are now on our doorstep and in our bedroom because of the internet, because of social media, because of Singaporeans traveling, and now also because of AI. Is so much easier to generate stuff and to persuade people or mislead people. So what do we do? And we've passed this Foreign Interference Countermeasures Act, FICA, as one of the ways which we are dealing with hostile foreign influence operations, and also operations to use individuals and organizations here for their purposes. So what's the difference? Hostile influence operation means you get all kinds of messages on the social media. Looks like it's viral, but actually it's the same virus which has been distributed into 1,000 different monikers. But hostile influence of persons is really, I use you, and then you have been either willingly or for some reason are willing to speak up and to speak on behalf of the foreign actor. And the organization is willing to speak or act on behalf of the foreign actor and participate in politics and thereby influence what's happening in the country. And I think that's improper, that's dangerous, and that's also not hard to do. So what do we do about it? And what FICA has done about it is to say, I will call you a politically significant person, PSP. It's not a political party's name, it's a politically significant person. What does it mean? It means you either have a nexus to Singapore politics, meaning you're politically active or you're supporting some political party, or you have a nexus to some foreign actor. So if you have a nexus to some foreign actor, you may not be politically active, but you could become politically active and become a player in a problem. If you are a political actor, but you don't have a foreign nexus, you're not a threat, but at some point, some foreign actor may decide to make friends with you, and then you may become vulnerable and a threat. So what do I want to do by declaring you a politically significant person? I want you to declare every year, these are my foreign connections, these are my foreign sources of money. What does that achieve? First, everybody will know you are a PSP. I think that's helpful. So when you come, they will know that this is somebody politically significant. He's not just an innocent third-party advocate who believes deeply in what he says and is putting that view forth, but possibly you must know what his connections are. Secondly, it makes it harder for somebody, some foreign actor, to influence him, because if you put him onto your distinguished advisory committee, he has to declare it, and that diminishes his value to you. Thirdly, if he doesn't have any connections, it enables him to declare and see, I don't have any connections, you can trust me, I am a politically significant person, but I am not doing anything wrong. So in that way, we manage the problem. So who are PSPs? I am a PSP because I'm the PM, and therefore nexus to Singapore politics, quite clear. My ministers are PSPs. My MPs are PSPs. The opposition MPs, even the NMPs, they are also PSPs, automatically, not designated, but they are also PSPs. The People's Action Party, as a party, that is a PSP too, because the party can be subverted. And every year the party has to declare, I'm not receiving foreign money, I don't have foreign connections. And if you declare falsely, then of course many consequences will follow. So that is the reason why we have a mechanism to declare, to define PSPs, to declare somebody to be a PSP, and therefore try and keep our system safer. So being declared a PSP doesn't mean necessarily that you have done anything wrong. It's just to put everybody on notice that you have either a foreign nexus or you're politically active.
Is there a difference between being gazetted a PSP and being declared a PSP? Or?
No. The ministers, the PM and so on, we don't have to be gazetted or declared. Gazetting and declaring are the same thing. The ministers and so on, we are PSPs automatically. Because you're occupying that position, you are a PSP. I think the PAP as a party, likewise, you are a party, you are a political party, you are by definition politically sensitive. If you are another organization, you could be a trade union, for example, you could be politically active because you can support one party or another. You are entitled to. But you are not automatically declared under the law to be a PSP. You could be gazetted. So gazetting makes you a PSP. Once you are one, it doesn't matter how you became one.
So does that mean then that the PAP and the other political parties would then have to declare their links or connections every year under this law?
And every MP and every minister. And we have to do that from now onwards.
What about all these, there are a lot of businessmen maybe who have dealings with China and all that, and maybe for their own economic interests, they are always pushing for certain things and, certain actions to be taken. Would that put them in danger of becoming PSPs because they will surely have links?
Well, you have to, that will be a matter of judgment and a decision which MHA will have to make. Not everybody who does business in China is of interest. Not everybody who speaks well of a foreign country is necessarily a foreign agent or is likely to be a foreign agent or is likely to have influence. So to be a PSP, you have to cross a certain threshold that you are likely to matter, and therefore we will do something about it.
Do you foresee more people being gazetted?
I do not know.
PM, we can talk a bit about racism. The minorities have come a long way past 2 decades and beyond, but racism still exists. Do you ever see it being eradicated, or what are your views on this?
I think it is less in Singapore than most other countries. We will work to make it better. I think to make it completely disappear, I think would be very difficult. We started off with a founding ideal to be one people regardless of race, language, or religion. And actually we've gone very far in that direction by policies, by government indoctrination even, by the way we have built our society to make it one people regardless of race, language, and religion, and to treat everybody equally at work, at social occasions, in the way we interact with one another, full opportunities and equal treatment. To make prejudice disappear completely between different human groups who are going to remain different and keep our cultures, our heritages and our religions, which are not the same. I think to remove altogether any sense of that difference, this distinctiveness, I think that will be very hard. So I think that we will improve. We will do more things to nudge this in the right direction. For example, the workplace discrimination legislation, which we are working on. And I think that will make a difference. But ultimately, I don't believe that you can make this completely disappear, and we have to know what to do when we fall short of perfection and something happens. So once in a while you have somebody say something outrageous and then it makes everybody very angry. Once in a while you really have a bad incident and we have to take action about it. You have to react. Either punishment must follow according to the law, or at least stern disapproval must be expressed, and the leaders must take a stand. But these are things which you have to judge, and you have to decide what is the best way to handle it, because sometimes if there's a small incident and you overreact, and everybody gets het up overnight because you saw somebody made a foolish post, I think is not really the wisest way to handle it. You have to see it in perspective. It's wrong, I condemn it, don't do it again. Let's move on. Sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can't, you have to go further, but you have to judge it and you cannot have maximum response every time. In the West, they got a movement called wokeness, where you are super sensitive about other people's issues and you become hypersensitive when other people somehow or other say things or mention things or refer to you without the respect which you or your super subgroup feel you are entitled to. And it leads to very extreme attitudes and social norms, particularly in some academic institutions, universities. You talk about safe spaces, you talk about appropriate pronouns, you talk about... I'm about to say something which may be offensive to you. If you don't want to hear it, perhaps you'd like to leave now. And life becomes very burdensome. And I don't think we want to go in that direction. It does not make us a more resilient, cohesive society with a strong sense of solidarity. We must be more robust.
But PM, as small as the world is becoming and as interconnected the youth are, I mean, and I don't mean just people who are in their 20s and 30s, I mean people who are under the age of 40 or 50 and below, young enough, their attitudes get shaped.
Yes.
They get influenced.
Yes.
Are we at risk of that as well?
Yes, we are. We are open to outside influence. You don't want to be completely closed and ignore the rest of the world. But when a new fad sweeps the world, we should look at it cautiously. I think we can afford to wait a while before we decide whether it's wise or not. But these things happen. I mean, I talk about wokeness, but it's also religious norms, it's also cultural norms, sexual norms too, family norms. We are all part of one global humanity, and yet we are a Singapore nation. And you will always be both of this. And I want to keep this Singapore nation cohesive, united, open, but not dissolved and just melted away. And that, I think, for Singapore for the long term, that is one of our key nation building tasks.
All right, so now moving on to good politics. You have led PAP during a time where there was growing appetite for opposition and diversity. You have mentioned this several times, where the majority of people, they want PAP to rule, but they still want the opposition to keep the government in check. So question is, people have questioned PAP's dominance over the years. How do you view that perception that people have? And also, has PAP changed over the years?
We certainly have changed. We've changed generationally, new leaders. We've changed in terms of the policies, updated regularly. We've changed in terms of the way we pitch the policies. How do we reach out? How do we put it out? How do we explain it? It's not just going onto social media and TikTok, but the way in which you engage people, discuss it with them, modify your views as you go along, and then finally present in an interactive way and get people to buy in. I think we've changed a lot over the years, and it's for the better. Certain things have not changed. Our commitment to Singapore has not changed. Our determination to maintain high standards of integrity and competence, it has not changed. Our commitment to serve Singaporeans is the same. Our intention to keep on providing a high quality government for Singapore, I think that must always be there. And Singapore depends on that, because if the PAP didn't do that, I think any other political party would be hard put to do the same thing. It's a reality. As for dominance, I wouldn't say dominance. I would say this is the mandate of the people. They want the Singapore government to govern. We are governing the way we think works best for Singapore. And works best for Singapore for this generation. Because Mr. Lee Hsien Loong governed in a certain way. It worked for his generation. It wrought miracles, practically. But it was his generation and him. And Mr. Goh Chok Tong did it his way for a younger generation, different from Mr. Lee. And I have tried to do it my way, different from both Mr. Lee and Mr. Goh. If I had tried to do it their way, either one, I think I would have failed. But beyond that, I don't know what you mean by dominance, because we set the agenda, we implement the policies, we make it work. But in Parliament, there are ample alternative voices. The opposition has a dozen MPs, there are NMPs as well. All views are aired and questions are asked without any restraint, answered, debated. People write all sorts of pieces on op-eds online, on CNA Insider, or in newspapers. That's the way a vibrant system works. So, yes, we have the people's support. Finally, the people want us to govern. If you call that dominance, well, we are dominant. But if you say we are a government with a strong mandate in a system where many other views are heard and not suppressed, I think that's a more accurate description of where we are.
PM, you spoke about how in Parliament there are now more alternative voices, and you have said before that the PAP is in this unique quandary where people want you to be the government, but yet they want the opposition to do well enough so they can come into Parliament to check you. Yeah. And you mentioned how that could have an impact on maybe having to spend more energies on politics rather than policies. So during your time as Prime Minister, have you seen, how has this affected maybe the debates in Parliament, and have you seen actual impact on?
Well, I think there is no doubt that we're spending more time on politics than before. I think we still spend more time on policies, but that we do feel in the PAP that we have to spend the time on politics because you must win the politics. Otherwise, the policies cannot run. That's the way the system works. Parliament with more opposition, more active opposition, I think the debates have become more intense. From the point of view of quality of debate, if you are watching it as a television debate, I would have to say the quality has improved because there are more opposition MPs. They come with prepared positions, they have coordinated amongst themselves, they make their pitch, the government replies. From the point of view of government, has it improved people's understanding of issues and enlightened the public? The answer is mixed. Because once in a while you have a non-contentious issue. For example, if there's a nasty accident and you discuss what should we do more to prevent accidents from happening, our heart bleeds for the victims. Or you've got a problem which is completely non-political, such as you've got so many internet scams, how do I protect people better from being cheated on the internet, old folks, vulnerable people. I think there it's not so hard to have a constructive debate, and the opposition will chip in ideas, and sometimes if you close your eyes, it sounds quite, could have been made by somebody white in white. But many other important issues inherently carry some political color to it, and it's very difficult to take that political color out and have a debate which is solely focused on improving the policy and making things better or clearing it out. If you ask why healthcare is not more affordable, if you ask why housing doesn't come faster and should we build more houses or not, if you ask education, should we have more university places or fewer, should we teach things in school one way or the other, the temptation to make this an occasion to score points against the government, the incentive to do it, not the temptation, but the incentive to do it, is very strong. Because if you help the government to govern better, and the government says, thank you, I will do it, and the result is better, you're making it harder for yourself to get elected the next time. And you want to get elected, right? So the premium is on showing up what the shortcomings are. Why is it you don't do it the other way? I have a good idea. Here's how you can make it cheaper, better, faster. And then, TV-wise, it's still a good debate. But enlightenment-wise and productivity-wise, I'm not so sure. You may have to go through it because some of these arguments will be out there, the views will be there, you have to deal with them, you have to rebut it. But I think if we spend more and more time thinking up clever arguments and rebutting clever arguments, we will have less and less time thinking up good ideas and implementing good ideas. And if the trend is that I want more and more check and balance and more alternative voices, and still I want a PAP government, you are inevitably going to weaken the government in terms of the energy it has to work on policies that benefit Singaporeans, in terms of its ability to assemble a team which is up to scratch to deliver a high-quality government to Singaporeans. And I think the quality of government will go down, our policies will be less creative, the results will generate fewer benefits for Singaporeans, and at some point the political system will malfunction. It is a risk.
Is there a magic number or some proportion in Parliament by which, it will tip over?
There is no magic number, but we have to push very hard against this. That there is a trend, I think that's the way politics works. When I came I was elected in 1984, there were two opposition MPs in Parliament elected that year, Jeyaretnam and Chiam See Tong. And we thought that it was quite a major setback, because up to then there was just Mr. Jeyaretnam who had been appointed in a by-election. And we thought this was a major setback, and we would have to work very hard to deal with this. Well, we were able to hold the line, and after Mr. Goh Chok Tong took over, he had the general election in 1991, and you may or may not remember, but in that general election, the opposition contested very few of the seats. And Mr. Chiam See Tong very proudly declared that this was his by-election strategy, meaning that there's no danger of my taking over the government. You've got a PAP government, now please vote for me. Quite safe, nothing will happen. I won't be your government, you can vote for me. Yes. And he got elected, but that was then. It's an amazing approach. When I became PM, I called the general election for the first time. Even then, there was a minority of seats which were contested. Most of the seats were not contested. The PAP formed the government on nomination day. This last election, all the seats were contested. Now the opposition says, we want 1/3. Check the PAP. So one newspaper columnist said they want 1/2. They stoutly denied that. Strong rebuttal, indignation. We don't want 1/2. Why so indignant? Shock and awe. Because they want people to feel it's quite safe. Just move a little bit further along the slope. No harm, nothing will happen. Life will carry on, PAP will look after you. We will be even stronger checking the PAP and speaking up for you. Marvelous. Have your cake and eat it twice. But is it so safe? So you ask me what is a safe number, I say there's no safe number. This is the way the system will work everywhere if you have elections. You must have elections because without that, we'll have other very serious problems in the politics. And we have to make this work as best we can. The way it has worked in Singapore is quite special and doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. Democracy or non-democracy. There is consent, there is mandate, and there is restraint, and there is sustainable continuity. It's remarkable. You leave it, you will never come back. People ask, how does politics work in Singapore? So I explain to them. They look at me, they think I'm a man from Mars. They cannot imagine anything like this happening in their country. Union foreign delegates visit the NTUC. NTUC talk to them about tripartite relationship, how they work with the government, with the people, with the employers, how we go for win-win, how we negotiate, protect workers' rights, but we are not at loggerheads with one another, confrontational. They listen to NTUC. They tell the NTUC, when my government behaves like your government, I will behave like you. So there you are. You get there, you can't come back. We are here. Keep it like this for as long as you can. It delivers outstanding results, whether security, whether economy, whether housing, education, healthcare, everything. To make this government work like this, to have this kind of standard of living in Singapore, to be able to to have a leader who can say, I have the support of the people, I've done my best for the people, and I think I have delivered. I think that's a very rare privilege which Singaporeans have. Keep it.
But PM, you can imagine maybe the opposition parties will say that this is your pitch, and of course they are hoping that this doesn't remain forever.
Yes, of course. They have to. That's the way the system is set up, and that must be their mission.
So do you think in your lifetime you might see a non-PAP government in power one day?
I will try, I hope not. We will try very hard as the PAP to make sure that we continue to win the people's mandate and to hold the position in a different way with a different generation. But if that happens, that means we have failed to do that. It can happen.
PM, you speak about the mandate, and ultimately the power lies in the hands of the electorate at the ballot box on election day. Are you concerned at all as we face the prospect of another general election, which must be called not too far, before November next year? Are you concerned at all about an erosion of support for the PAP?
You mean support people want us to be government, or support people will actually put the cross on the right spot on the ballot paper?
Putting that cross on the ballot paper.
We will see when the boxes are opened. You never know. In 2015, the results were better than we expected. In 2020, the results were not as high as we hoped. So you never know. We will try our best to deserve that cross against the right logo, and we'll fight hard to persuade people to do that. But it can go to the wrong place, and the earlier question, 20 years, it can happen. It can happen because the PAP has let the people down then, and the opposition has become stronger and better and offers a better alternative. Well, in that situation, I say, I'm sad for the PAP, but for Singapore, go for the opposition, vote the better team, take care of the country. So be it. It has to be. And may you succeed, may you take the country forward. But it can also be that the political system has malfunctioned, because I described to you how it can go wrong. And therefore, the government was less able to govern well, and therefore lost the support. And there's nobody else there who is going to be able to do better. And then I think the country is in real trouble. And that can easily happen.
Just adding on, how can we actually foster more interest in politics amongst our youth? I have to also say that some of our ministers' social media game is strong. It's getting better with time actually, and they're giving a tough fight for the youngsters. But how do you think we can increase youngsters' interest in politics?
Well, I think the social media is one way of doing it. I went onto Facebook, Instagram, then came TikTok. I think TikTok will be for the next generation of ministers. And at least it interests the people in the personalities, maybe a little bit in the content, and hopefully encourages them to think more deeply about what this is about. But frankly, you cannot convey the essence of being a Singaporean via social media. Even with a television channel and a newspaper and acres of newsprint, you work very hard to get that sense across. Because it's not just the message across, but the interaction and the participation and the life experience and engagement which makes it happen. So to make the younger generation interested, I think if you have a crisis, people pay attention. During COVID, my posts were always very well followed because people were anxious and wanted to know what was happening. And if I had something new to tell them or to update them, they wanted to know. I'm sure there will be other tensions which will come and people will pay attention. During Gaza, Israel-Gaza, I think news consumption went up. During Ukraine, in early stages, news consumption went up. Probably now tapered off. But hopefully people read all this and don't just treat it as entertainment. I finish watching flick, and then tomorrow I flick new stuff. But something sinks home and you think about it and contemplate it and conclude what does it mean to be a Singaporean. And I think that is a lot of work. We try to do it in school, we try to do it through national service. I hope parents try to do it with their children. We do it every year, National Day, we make a big thing of the parade because it's an opportunity for people to take pride in the country. These things mean something and we need to do more of them.
Your advice for young people, on taking the next step and to join politics like you have?
If you are idealistic, if you want to do something, if you want to make a contribution, please seriously consider that. It's very hard. It's harder now. I think to join politics maybe not so hard because it's may not be in the limelight. To decide to be a candidate is harder because then you are exposed and your family also has their privacy impinged upon, and family time. I mean, if all your weekends are spent in the constituency, when are you going to take your kid to the zoo? So that's a consideration. But also social media and the online discourse, which can sometimes be very vicious, is a real consideration. And the families say, why do I want to put myself and my kids through this? Even if you're willing to sacrifice, what about, you must think about us. So that is a real problem. And that's why we disapprove strongly of the false and vicious stuff which comes out on the internet. We haven't got a entirely good solution yet, but it is a serious problem. And it is particularly a problem looking for people coming in to take office, to be Palsex, MOSs, ministers. No, what for? And yet you need high quality Palsex, MOSs, ministers, MPs, grassroots activists.
So PM, having gone through all this, would you encourage your children to join politics, like any of your children?
If they had an interest, if they were not my children, and if they had an interest, yes. If they are my children, the hurdle is higher. So far, none of them have showed any interest. My grandchildren are much too young.
When you talk about social media, nice segue to our next question. You are possibly our original social media influencer.
Now, a very small time one.
But how has the platform, help you in terms of connecting with the people?
You reach a different audience. People who follow my posts, like my pictures, know when I jalan-jalan, may not read my speeches or listen to my rallies. But it's an audience, and then when I post something else, hopefully it will turn up on their feed and they may take notice and maybe read it. It's somewhat transferable, but I post jalan-jalan, the response is very good. Tomorrow I post a meeting with so-and-so, very important visitor. It's not the same. But that's the way it is.
Okay, and PM, after you become senior minister, do you already know what you might be doing in cabinet? Have you discussed this with DPM Lawrence Wong?
Well, I have talked to him. I said, I will be here to do my best to help you to succeed. You have to be your own person. You have to make the decisions. You have to lead in your own way, persuade people in your own way. But I will give you the benefit of my experience and my views. But you have to set the tone. You have to carry the decisions.
Are there areas that you think you can contribute more in? Like some of our previous SMs, they have maybe dealt with a lot of foreign policy issues or some of the tricky issues between Singapore and Malaysia.
Well, I hope that the people I know, the network of leaders I've met and who know me will still be there for some time. They're getting old too and getting on. For example, President Jokowi is completing his term this year. And many of the leaders I've known, like Angela Merkel and Tony Blair, they retired some time ago. But to the extent that I have people who know me and whom I can talk to, I will certainly make use of that and engage them. Specific sensitive policies, that's up to the Prime Minister to decide. If he arrows me to do it, I will take the arrow.
Thank you, PM.
Thank you, PM.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.